Calling from a 501 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Blake, the Libertarian of the No Free Lunch infamy. I wanted to talk to you guys, ask you three questions, and you guys can pick the one. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, and you guys can pick the one that you find to be most juicy. They're not gotcha. They're very simple.
Okay.
The one is would you rather people be independent or dependent on the government? The second is do you think that the Trump administration and Republicans generally don't want witnesses to be called in the impeachment trial? And the third is, would you prefer that people get in a position where they must contemplate an abortion or not get in that position in life? The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Blake. I would say that the question is silly. This is the first question. Do I want people independent or dependent of government? There is no one who lives in society that is independent of government. That is an impossibility. That's like saying, would you prefer people have can fly or not fly? Well, it doesn't matter because you know what? We don't have wings. The reality is, can you tell me a person who lives in this country who is independent of the government?
I know a couple, yes.
Who?
They, Al and Sheila, I'm not going to say their last name, but they're close friends of mine.
And
they live in northwestern Arkansas.
They do?
Yes.
And
they live out in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere?
They are completely solar. They have wells. Obviously,
where did they get the solar technology? Did they develop the solar technology?
No, they didn't.
What?
I knew this would happen, and what I wanted from you guys was just a very simple answer. It's a very simple question. Like I said, it wasn't a got you.
No, well, like I say, your question
obviously government exists.
Blake,
obviously government
are you married?
Exists, and it has done things.
Blake, are you married?
No.
You're not married?
No.
Do you have a girlfriend, boyfriend?
Yes, girlfriend.
When did you stop beating her? It's a simple question.
Sam,
just give me a date.
It's ridiculous.
Just give me a date. Simple question.
Jesus Christ.
All right, let me ask you this. I'll make it even simpler. Did you stop beating her?
Well,
Blake, this is a simple question.
Statement.
This is a question.
Yeah.
It's a simple question. Did you stop beating her?
You're assuming the presumption that I have before.
Okay. And now I think we've been able to illustrate my problem with your question, which assumes that it's possible for people to live in this country when they're not, in some fashion, dependent upon government.
I didn't say it was possible or impossible. What I asked is,
I didn't say whether you had. I didn't say whether you had or had not beaten your girlfriend. I'm just asking if you stopped.
Like I said, that's a presumption. That's an assumption.
Right. Well, you're presuming that being independent of government is possible.
People have and did and can't even currently live independent of the government. It is a possibility.
Well, you told me Steve and Sheila or whatever their names are, and I'm asking
Al and Sheila.
Al and Sheila, where did they get the technology to build this solar stuff?
Shout out.
From other people.
From other people? Where did they get it from? Wasn't government funding that or loans? Entrepreneurship. Wasn't government funding or loans that developed it? I'm curious as to where they got it. I have a feeling they probably got that stuff from China. China certainly poured a ton of money. The Chinese government poured a ton of money into that.
Are they dependent on government over there in China?
Does government own people's minds and thoughts and ideas?
No.
Okay.
It defends their intellectual property.
Does government control all the money? Does government control labor? Does the government control your work and your time and your energy? No.
Well, they don't control it, but that's not what you asked me, is it? I mean, they control some of it. They certainly control.
No, what I asked was, is it better for people to live independent or dependent upon government?
I know. And I answered you that there is no living independent of government. It doesn't exist.
Well, what even is a government?
There's a lot of things that haven't existed until they're realized.
Oh, so in terms of utopia, I would say if we're living in a utopia, it doesn't matter because everything's great anyways. So it really doesn't matter what our relationship to government is because we're in utopia.
Well, look,
Obviously not.
best case scenario, what's
You
a
got me.
government? It's an expression of the people's will, right? The collective will. Now, obviously, we don't really live in a world where it functions that way. But now I'm talking about my ideology, which tends to be more on the socialist end of things. So why is it a bad thing for the people to depend upon the people if the government is just an expression of the people? Like, I don't think it's a bad thing for people to live in an interdependent community because I believe we have a collective responsibility to one another.
I would phrase it as I have the same point, and I would just ask Blake, would you rather depend on government for something like healthcare or health insurance, or would you rather depend on a private corporation?
Neither. I don't think that health insurance is a
Okay,
a
healthcare.
justified product
Healthcare.
for most people to buy. I mean, obviously,
healthcare-
healthcare is dependent on how you take care of yourself. I mean, to the degree that you need healthcare in your life depends on how you take care of yourself.
Right. Right.
And honestly,
because everybody who catches
if you
need
healthcare at a certain
or you
point in
catch
your life,
a disease,
the majority of the cost, the majority of the expenditure goes into premiums, deductibles, staff to deal with emails and claims and you know all sorts of things that have
Blake,
nothing to do with the actual cost
your
of the
original.
healthcare.
None of that's true. Let me answer your original question. Okay. And that is, I do not think it's a bad thing to be dependent on government because every bit of progress we have made as a society has been a function, at least in some part, of a dependency on government. And I actually think that, I think the question is silly because I don't think it's possible to be independent of government. I do not think that the level of dependence on government, if one could actually even assess that, has any bearing on how we do as a society. It is really a function of what government, the nature of that dependency, and what a government is providing. You perceive it as dependency, but yes, I would like to be able to depend on the government to ensure, literally, that I have access to health insurance in an easy and inexpensive, it's going to cost something, but I'll pay it in taxes, way. Yes, I think that would be great. Do I want to be dependent upon a government to create a market for Hellfire missiles? Less so. Do I want to feel dependent upon government to deliver my mail? Yeah, I'm pretty good with that. What about providing driver's licenses and making sure that the roads are safe? Yes, I would also like to be dependent upon the government for creating a better public transportation system, one where there's more trains and maybe above ground trolleys, or I don't want to get into the specifics of it because I'm not an expert on that. But broadly speaking, yes, because I don't have the ability to do that. There's a whole host of things that I think that it's very good to be dependent on the government for because otherwise it won't exist.
Does the government have their own ideas and their own money? And I mean, what is the government? Jamie asked the question earlier, and I would say
the government
that the government is force.
At its best.
Energy and time and money and resources exist aside from government.
Well, that's
They're
correct.
simply
But the
force.
collective, but government is simply at best, a collective will of the most amount of people that is set up to provide the most amount of benefit for the most amount of people.
The other thing that Jamie said is that it's supposed to be, broadly speaking, for and by the people. Now, I would ask you, at the current level of government that we have, can you imagine
level means, but go ahead.
that the government gets bigger and has more force and goes anywhere near Jamie's, maybe you could call it utopian idea of what government's supposed to be?
Yes, I can imagine.
Can you imagine it would get any better?
Yeah. Yes. If it is more restrictive of corporate power, yes. The answer is yes.
you refuse to, I guess, acknowledge the fact that there's always going to be corruption. The bigger the government gets, the more corruption there's going to be.
No,
whether it's hidden, whether you choose to
I don't
address
think that's
it or not,
correct,
whether you want to overlook
actually,
it.
I don't think that's
it's your favorite
correct.
politician. You
I
don't
don't
want to
think
see
that's
the ties.
correct.
I mean,
I don't think that's correct. I think there's always going to be corruption.
How is that not correct?
I'm explaining it to you, Blake. I think there's always going to be corruption. I think when you allow for moneyed interests to have too much power, you get more corruption. If the dynamic between the entities, so for instance, I actually think that local government generally is more corrupt. Does that blow your mind, Blake?
How do you see that?
How do I see that? Because I see in rural areas, I've seen it in cities. Corporations come in, they have so much money that to a guy who's in a city that, of 100,000 people, somebody's going to drop in a couple $100,000. That's real money.
Amazon has, or New York has a ability to stand up to Amazon in the way smaller cities won't.
And I mean, petty corruption, broader corruption, the smaller the government, the more apt it is to be bought out by corporations. We see this all the time, Blake.
I'm going to try something on Blake. May I, if I may? Because there is a subset of libertarians that is genuinely concerned more with state power and authoritarianism and liberty than they are with letting poor people starve. And if you are one of these people, I would like you to look into the libertarian socialist tradition because it shares a lot of your skepticism of centralized state power, while also allowing for the fact that we are all in this together and have a collective responsibility to one another. Now, they might not call it government, they might call it governance, but there are some similarities. Unless you're a full-on anarcho-primitivist, we acknowledge that we need some sort of structure, some sort of power structure to run the day-to-day activities of any given area. And, hopefully they be federated together because we do live in a large and complex world. Does that make any sense to you?
Or, Blake, are you just a guy who doesn't want to have to pay for other people eating Twinkies?
Well, there's multiple ways to answer your question, Sam, but I'll speak to Jamie's suggestion or a comment there. Libertarian and socialist, they're completely antithetical to one another. They're heading in the exactly wrong direction.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, Blake, anything else you want to add to this?
Did you want to address the other two very simple questions that I posed that you haven't answered?
Well, you said choose one, if I'm not mistaken.
I feel
What was the third one? The third one was interesting to me. The second one was something about witnesses or something.
About abortion.
What was the third one? Oh, do I think
I asked if it's good that people not get into a position in their life where they don't have to contemplate an abortion?
I mean, I think that's probably preferable. I mean, why go through the expense or having to go to the doctor?
I didn't say have. I said contemplate.
What? Say again?
I didn't say have an abortion. I said contemplate having an abortion. The circumstances in life that people find themselves in when they even have to.
Would you contemplate you mean, are you talking about just like people shouldn't even think of abortion or that you shouldn't contemplate having an abortion?
Okay, let me simplify it. Is it better that people don't find themselves in a financially compromising position, an unwanted pregnancy, a relationship status that isn't necessarily good or conducive to having a child and a marriage or a relationship?
Wait, this is the
home
part where you simplify
whatever.
This is the simplified part?
I'm asking you, is it good that people don't find themselves in the situation where they would have to contemplate having an abortion?
You mean where they don't get pregnant?
Yeah, and don't get pregnant under some bad extenuating circumstances.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that pregnancy
is not bad in and of itself.
I would rather
it's a
not
situation
need
that
an
surrounds
abortion.
Well, I mean, pregnancy in and of itself is not bad unless you don't want a child. And then it becomes problematic. So
what are the precautions that somebody would take to not find themselves in the position to have to contemplate an abortion?
Forced sterilization? Are you
No, not
advocating
force. I asked choice. I said choice, not force. Choice on the individual level.
Blake, what are you trying to get at here? I honestly can't understand what you're saying. Do I think it would be better if people didn't have to contemplate having an abortion?
He's saying that women should be punished for their own bad choices with forced pregnancy and birth. Isn't that what you're saying, Blake?
No, he wouldn't say that because he's a libertarian and he doesn't believe in anything like that, right?
No. Well, I don't even know what she just said, but where this is coming from is there seems to be a large conversation, and it's always been there, I suppose, to some degree, but it's amping up. And I hear Republicans say we need to make abortion illegal. I don't agree with that.
Okay, good. I appreciate that.
I'm pro-choice.
Okay,
I'm pro-choice, but the conversation is not framed in the right way. It's always about the abortion. What you want to do, I would say,
is
I don't know, maybe this is up for debate. Maybe this is up for debate as well. But you don't want people to find themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Hillary Clinton proposed.
What's your point?
I wouldn't say just as though I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, Blake.
That
what are you arguing?
Is,
I said I agree. It would be better if people were in the position to have abortions less. Of course. In the same way that it would be better for people to be in a position to have a cavity filled less. I mean, yes.
Right. So for the betterment of society on just about every level, why don't we start talking about things like that as opposed to
like what? Like you mean like? Well, how about this? Sex ed. I'm for sex education. That's a way of avoiding teen pregnancies. We've seen the data on that. In fact, we've seen that teaching chastity actually increases the number of teen pregnancies. So I would do sex education. I would also offer, more free condoms. We could maybe do that through NGOs, but I think we should probably do it through the government. We could do it through schools. I think we could also do this by offering things like the day after pill and day after contraception, the day after chemical abortion drugs as well. I mean,
Medicare for all, cover contraception for everyone all the time. No copay, no questions asked.
Yep.
Again, you're addressing the situation where an abortion has to be contemplated. I don't.
You know what,
there's a whole
Blake?
lot more
You're making me contemplate an abortion right now of this call. Good day, sir.
Goodness me, Blake.
These are fun, but they're also frustrating because we're arguing with somebody that we do not agree with on first principles.
Well, I don't even know what first principles.
You and I can agree, for example, that society has a collective responsibility to help everybody live a decent life. And you and I can have a discussion about the best way to do that. But if somebody doesn't agree on that, then I don't know what there is to say.
But here's the weird part. I don't know that I disagreed with Blake. I don't think there are people out there going God, I hope I'm going to try and get another abortion any more than you would say God, I really hope that I can get root canal or I can get, a filling. I mean, nobody would do that. I
wasn't sure where he was going with that.
I don't know, but it wasn't a gotcha question. It just took about 45 minutes to get there.
Glad he simplified it for us.
Yes. Quite an experience. Calling from a 910. That's what Libertarian Rule will look like, ladies and gentlemen. So enjoy yourself. Calling from